Good morning and welcome to Litmus Test. When we left off last time, we touched on the idea of some different sugars with empirical formulas, and we talked about how different atomic structure of molecules didn't always correspond to different differences in chemical formulas. And I said I might build a model of them, and then I was like, oh, I should go to bed. Then I was like, no, I'm going to do it. But I should go to bed. But I did it. So, we're going to talk about three really important molecules that play a big role in sugar and biochemistry. And I'm going to fix a mistake I made in last video. Last video I said that glucose and lactose have the same chemical formula, and that's not true. I was talking about glucose and galactose and fructose. And so I've built models of them, and I'll explain the differences and fix that mistake. So let's turn around and look at these models and hope that it doesn't blow your brains. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, what is this? Okay, let's take this slowly, and let's start real carefully. I've got a couple different blocks here. I'm going to go off to the side and demonstrate what they mean. This is a carbon atom. This is an oxygen atom. And this is a hydrogen atom. Glass panes indicate chemical bonds. So these two carbon atoms are bonded, and this carbon atom is going to be bonded to an oxygen atom up here. I am not using glass panes when I put hydrogens on things, so there is a chemical bond between these two atoms. It is a bit shorter than the bond between these two atoms here. There is a bond between the hydrogen and oxygen, but it's shorter, and it tends to clutter up the models too much if I draw out every single bond. So anytime I have a hydrogen stuck on something, I've just put it right next to it instead of drawing the little bond in between. For many of these other things, I've drawn the bonds because Minecraft being blocks, it's hard to represent shapes like pentagons and hexagons unless you space them out a bit. And if they're spaced out, it doesn't look like they're bonded unless there's something connecting them. So I'm using glass to represent that type of bond. Fence would have worked too. Fence may have worked a little bit better in some cases, but that's okay. So, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, chemical bonds. Let's go take a look at what these things look like. And we're going to start with glucose. And the first thing we're going to notice is that if you look at the general shape of it, it's kind of a hexagon in the middle with bits sticking off of either side. Glucose has the formula C6H12O6, but so does its friend galactose, C6H12O6, and its other friend, fructose, C6H12O6. We know that glucose plus galactose will give you lactose. Combining these two molecules gives you a bigger molecule, and that's what lactose really is. Likewise, if we take glucose plus fructose, we get sucrose. This is table sugar. All right? So we're going to let's look at these things and actually get some idea what's going on. With this glucose molecule, there's this core hexagon. Imagine this is a hexagon made up of several carbon atoms and one oxygen atom. On each of the carbon atoms, there's a hydrogen attached, sometimes at the side, sometimes on the bottom, sometimes on top. And there's also attached an oxygen and hydrogen. We call this an OH group or hydroxy group, because that's an O and an H and they go together. So there's an OH group. Sometimes it's down below, sometimes it's on the side here. There it's on the side, here it's on the side. And then on this last carbon, there's a carbon atom with some hydrogens and another OH group attached as well. So we have some carbons in a ring with an oxygen at the head. Each carbon has a hydrogen and a hydroxy or OH group attached to it in slightly different arrangements, and the shape here is actually very important. And then the last carbon has a carbon and an OH group attached. So there's like a little tail off the side. All right, so notice what's really important about these sugars. Let's look at this. There's 6 there. Let's look at this one. This is galactose. Again, there's 6 things in the ring. 5 of them are carbon, 1 is oxygen, but the other carbon's sitting over here. This looks very similar to the glucose, right? There's a little tail of carbon, hydrogen, and hydroxy or OH groups, just like there was a little tail over here. And the main idea of the ring is the same. There's a bunch of carbons and an oxygen in a ring in glucose, and a bunch of carbons and an oxygen in a hexagon ring in galactose. Same idea. We know that the chemical formula is the same, so the same number of blocks are in each of these structures, the same number of hydrogen and oxygen atoms. What's different? Well, let's go carbon by carbon. We know that this carbon is the same, and we know that's just an oxygen. This carbon in galactose has an OH group pointing down. In glucose, that OH group is also pointing down. In glucose, the next carbon has an OH group pointing out to the side, and so does galactose, an OH group pointing out to the side. The third group has another OH group pointing out to the side. The third carbon in glucose also has an OH group pointing out to the side. It's this fourth carbon where things are different. In glucose, the fourth carbon points out to the side. And in galactose, the fourth carbon, well, the OH group points straight up. Notice, if you look here on this screen for a little bit, you can see that the OH group on glucose goes out to the side, and on galactose, the OH group goes straight up and down. Well, straight isn't really straight in terms of molecules, since these things are going to be wiggling and vibrating like crazy, and there's some other weird stuff that they can do, but the main difference here is that in this molecule, this goes out sideways, and in this molecule, it comes up and down. That doesn't seem like a big difference, but it ends up being really important because these two molecules together give you galactose. And if you just stuck 2 glucoses together, what happens if you stick 2 of these together? If you stick 2 glucoses together, you either get starch or cellulose, depending on whether you stick them together here or here. Again, it seems like a really small difference, but it actually really matters a big deal. If you stick the glucoses together here, then you'll end up with starch. You end up with something that you can, cut apart easily. If you stick them together here, you end up with cellulose. You get something that your body just can't cut apart at all. So it ends up being this huge difference between whether you have wood or potatoes. But that's just from sticking glucoses together. If you want milk sugar, if you want dairy sugar, you can't use a second glucose at all. This difference in carbon between this C4 where the OH points up and this C4 where the OH points sideways makes a huge difference in like dairy production. All of a sudden now you have this, putting these two together, you have this stuff called lactose, and some people just cannot handle lactose. This 2 things together, it doesn't work. Glucose, of course, is a completely different molecule. It's just this molecule on its own, as opposed to lactose, which is these 2 molecules stuck together. For those wondering, they usually stick together around this carbon here, will usually stick to this carbon here. And they will lose a hydrogen and an oxygen down there, the OH group. They'll lose that when they do so. So you get some very different properties from galactose and glucose. Putting those 2 together, you get lactose, but, and we'll put this down here just to make the point, that if we stick 2 glucoses together, well, glucose plus glucose or cellulose. I'm good at spelling, people. I'm real good at spelling. Cellulose. There we go. Glucose plus glucose equals starch or cellulose. Glucose plus galactose equals lactose. Very different things. Real quick, let's look at our third molecule. We'll compare it to glucose again because in our third molecule, we're looking at fructose. Fructose, as you might have guessed, comes from fruit. We find fructose really high concentration in fruit. And when we combine glucose and fructose, we get sucrose, which is table sugar. So table sugar is a mixture of these two molecules put together. And again, the mixture, when they bond together, they usually bond at this first carbon here and this first carbon here. But notice the biggest difference between fructose and glucose. This is fructose. And look at the central ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 atoms in this ring, an oxygen and 4 carbons. That means that we have a pentagon for a ring instead of a hexagon. You just have to imagine that Minecraft is good at making pentagons and hexagons, that's all. There are some similarities between these things, so they both have the same, empirical formula, and we notice that the fructose has the same idea that we've got OH groups sticking out to the sides or sticking up and down, but we also notice, real quick, that over here we've got the same, thing, that same tail that's sticking off here, this CH2OH tail on this side, but actually I've kind of drawn it on this side, haven't I? The CH2OH tail right here. But the big difference between these two is because we have 5 things in a ring, we've got to have this extra carbon. So notice that this side and this side both have that little tail. And notice that the fructose here, this particular carbon atom has an extra oxygen OH group sticking around up top. Make sure we have enough light for this. So we still have the same number of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen atoms, and you can stop and make sure I've added this up correctly. I've got 6 oxygens, and you can see I've got 6 carbons, and you can count the hydrogens if you want to. And that's the same for this glucose atom as well, or molecule. This glucose molecule also has the same empirical formula. They both have C6H12O6. But all of a sudden, doing things like putting this carbons in a pentagon instead of a hexagon means that you're looking at a very different type of sugar. This molecule on its own is made very frequently in most fruits and vegetables, and it is, some people would argue, more natural than sucrose, which is this and this together. That is fructose plus glucose. Sucrose comes from sugar cane or sugar beets. It's where we get most of our sucrose from. But you can just get plenty of fructose from high fructose corn syrup or from apples and oranges. Generally, your body handles glucose a little bit better. Glucose is very important and used in all living things as a source of energy. This is a big source of energy because there's 6 carbon atoms, so that means you can get 6 molecules of carbon dioxide coming off of it, so that's a lot of energy that can come off. But fructose still has 6 carbon atoms. It's just that they're arranged in a different manner. And so the molecules that interact with glucose to give you energy are not the same molecules that interact with fructose. In biochemistry, a lot of the molecules that interact aren't simple this element plus this element or this chemical plus that chemical. It becomes very much of a shape thing. And it turns out that the shape of this hexagon is different than the shape of this pentagon, and so the molecules that interact with glucose, like insulin, do not interact the same way with fructose. This is why high fructose corn syrup causes more problems than just eating lots of sugar, because high fructose corn syrup interacts with your body slightly differently because the fructose is a different shape. So the interaction is a little bit different than if you just ate table sugar, which is a mixture of glucose and fructose. Well, fructose and glucose. So we're going to cut it here. I just wanted to show you guys this cool model, and I wanted to really drive home the point that changing just where some atoms are, how atoms are bonded, just like the differences in an iron pickaxe versus an iron axe, changing the differences in where these atoms are bonded together can give you very different compounds with very different properties. So, until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe, and don't catch on fire.